All right, let's go ahead and get this started today. Is this the third panel of today? Fourth panel of today?
I've lost count.
I've lost count. All right, so welcome to the EverQuest Next Landmark Creating a World panel. This panel is about talking you through some of the ideas we initially had and how we ended up with what you saw during the debut. It's talking about some of the plans we have and just the history so you can understand how we got here. I want to make sure, not yet, Jeff, hold on. Wait for it. If you've been in the previous panels, this is yet again another time you get to hear this. These are just our initial ideas. These are the plans that we've put together while we were in our black box before we've had an opportunity to talk with our players and the community and everybody who's interested in this game. So while we have answers for the questions you have and we can tell you what we've planned, don't take this as gospel. You know, we want to work with you, we want to get feedback, and we want to integrate it into what this game is going to become. Take that in mind, and we really do care about your opinions. So just because we disagree with you at this moment doesn't mean that we'll disagree with you when we finally make the end decision for the game. Sitting on this panel, we have, let's see, I'm going to try and go with the order that we have over here. We have Jeff Butler, our creative director. We have Rosie Rappaport, our senior art director. Greg Spence, a senior programmer on the team, the client lead. Michael Mann, a combat and classes lead. And Jake Sones, a senior designer on the team. So I'm going to hand it over to them, and hope you like what they say.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Once again, I have the honor of kind of going over the philosophy of things. So, as you're aware, EverQuest is Sony Online Entertainment's flagship franchise, and we're going to continue on in that fine vein, leveraging our experience in producing past MMOs by applying the formula that proved successful for EverQuest, and that's assembling core pillars of gameplay where people have never been able to participate in a product that included those particular cores. Effectively, for me as a player, EverQuest created an opportunity to play a game that I couldn't find anywhere else. It really left me with no choice back in the day as to what I was going to do with my free time. And we're pursuing that same goal by bringing you a product that is not one that you can find anywhere else within the genre, or even, in this case, outside of the genre. It's all about the appeal. Landmark is intended to appeal to players who want to interact with every aspect of their game world by building, destroying, collaborating, and collecting. These features will provide new gameplay experiences for MMO players with the intent of establishing the player base, which I've talked about earlier, including more non-traditional players, which should clearly be of importance to people who are concerned with the longevity and the critical mass of the games that they participate in. You know, we've all been in that situation. 3 years, 2 years, 5 years after we started to play a game, where one of our friends asks us what we're doing, and we tell them about the game that we're playing. The more people who are playing, the more critical mass the game develops, the more people will want to play. The easier it will be to convince your friends to come play because everyone else will be playing. So it's very important to us. Most importantly, Landmark kicks off the creation of content for EverQuest Next. You're in our world now. At one point in time, we've had different philosophies and different taglines for EverQuest. The quotes around the R are very significant here. This is a completely different way of developing games. We are creating a world together, and Landmark marks that kickoff. The things that you build, not only possible to bring over to EverQuest Next later, the things that you build may actually end up in EverQuest Next as part of the core advancement, pieces of Keynos, for instance. Very important. Building upon the completely constructible, destructible, interactive game world, Landmark is going to go to the next logical step, empowering players to create content within the game. with nearly all the power of an internal developer. Through the same interactive gameplay mechanics, we're going to allow our customers to participate in the shaping of the world with us and to have fun doing it. Breaking the mold. We're going to break the mold of traditional massively multiplayer games by incorporating a missing key from our pen and paper ancestors. Those of you who have played Dungeons and Dragons, that game's been around for a very, very long time. I tease some of the designers on our team that I have character sheets that are physically older than they are. And obviously, I'm not kidding. In that game, everyone had the ability to shape the world. There were rules provided for players to be able to do that. There was the Dungeon Master. And they were able to have fun doing it. The Dungeon Master got to play the game and have a blast with the rest of his players. And we are very appreciative of what's come before. So, thus, EverQuest Next Landmark.
Thank you. So, thank you, Jake.
Ta-da!
I'm going to run you through the developments that have happened since we last talked at SOE Live. Was it 2011, maybe? 2010. Okay. So if you were there, we showed you some art. We continued to work on that design, and as you know, we had a reset. So I was going to walk you through what happened from that reset to now and how we got from there to here. One of my favorite quotes is this quote from Walt Disney. I think that keep moving forward. It's been my favorite phrase to the art team because it's very easy in a prototype to stagnate, especially you don't have, it's this chicken or egg situation where you need the tech, you need the design, you need the art, and it all has to come up at the same time from nothing. So how do you make that happen? The first thing that, oh, geez, did I do something wrong? Well, the first thing that we had to do was sit down and discuss our goals. So we had to brainstorm for some time and talk about what was going to make this game take the whole genre to the next level. What did we need to do? And the main thing that we were going to add that was going to affect the art side was the total constructible, destructible, and fully dynamic world with tiers of content. And then we had to wrap that into an engaging style. And our #1 goal above all else was that the game be fun. And that seems very obvious, but sometimes as an art director, my main goal is that the game looks amazing, but really the driving goal of the whole thing is that it's fun, and the art is service to that. So we started thinking about this constructible, destructible world, and a really, really good metaphor for that are these Lego sets that it's a set of these modular pieces and then the special pieces, and that became really important later on. Oh, and characters. That all goes together to create a set that we started thinking of as a theme. So for example, Kinos would be a theme that you would put together the modular pieces and the special pieces. And we had this other whole element that Lego doesn't even have, which is materials that we can put on everything and make it look like an MMO. So what we started out with was we knew we had blocks because that is the very most modular thing that you can have. We had props, and then we had materials. So this is what we had to work with. And we felt that this was probably going to be a very geometric looking game. It was going to be very angular. And I felt that the most important thing to buy off and to get everybody excited about it was to embrace the geometric style that we were going to plan on so that this would support the underlying technology. These are examples that you can see here from the artist Evelyn Earle, who was the artist that did all the backgrounds for Sleeping Beauty. And I thought that was very inspirational. You can see everything is very geometric, and that's a style and that's okay. And we're in the midst of everything, pushing everything to be very organic. I thought this would be the perfect thing, just to switch it up and say, no, we're going to go totally angular. So we started developing that a little bit, see where that would take us. It was a little rough on the concept artists because we just didn't know what we were going to do. So we had to start to explore. Was it going to be really blocky, like Minecraft? Was it going to be really organic with all the blocks disguised, or somewhere in the middle? We also had to look at what we had to use at that point. We had all of the concept art from the previous prototype, and we had all of the assets that we'd built from that prototype. So we wanted to leverage that art. That was very nice art, and there was nothing at all wrong with it. So we wanted to leverage it to get us moving forward a little faster. This is an example of what we showed last time that we showed at SOE Live. This is Freeport. These are all Maya models. This is totally not voxels.
For the previous prototype.
Yeah. So, and these are some of the materials that we had so this is all the tools that we had to work with. We did not have a client. All we had was a bunch of ideas and some old assets. That's you and me, old assets. So what we did was, I at first started trying to use Maya to prototype some of this, and it was just too much. It's like trying to kill a fly with a bazooka. What I ended up using—
could be very fun.
That could be very effective, but a little much. So I used SketchUp that you can see here and just made a block and started snapping them together just to see what would happen. And I was trying to emulate the previous concept piece. So then we talked about the materials. It was very important that the materials look very natural and realistic on top of this blocky world. You can see here, starting to try to lay in some of the previous materials on top of that SketchUp world. And then when it seemed like that was going in the right direction, we made a solid goal. The first goal that we had was to get from the SketchUp phase to a client phase in 3 months. We also did some experiments in Maya of smoothing, because smoothing, we knew this is going to be a huge, huge thing for us to get away from the blocky look. And what was that? Were we going to be able to do something natural or not, and could we emulate that? So the first thing we needed to do was think about a shape library so that we could have a smart and small library of shapes. We want it to be small for a lot of reasons, to be more efficient, but also so that when you think of building with Legos and you think about, you know, you're going through all of your Lego pieces and going through them and searching for that one piece. And we did not want the players to have to experience that, because that's boring. So we wanted to have this really smart library of shapes that could be offered to you at the appropriate times as you're building. After we also had to keep talking with the concept artists about, you know, could they also had this chicken and egg problem where we wanted them to create beautiful concept art, but blocky, but we didn't really know the rules. We're making up the rules as we went. So at first, the concept artists made just completely cubic looking castles that were definitely not going to work. So what we did was build off of old concept art in SketchUp, and then give screenshots of that to the concept artist, and then they did paint over. So you can see here, this is the Ixar area, and we just kept going. We just kept building, kept going, kept moving forward all the time. Didn't have a client, didn't, you know, have a lot of what we needed, but we just kept moving forward to investigate. And even this, I think, is an interesting example, because even when we didn't have concept art, I just got on Google and started looking at screenshots from other games and started building that out. So it's just all about what can you do with the tools that you do have, not about, you know, waiting for tools. So we did meet our first goal. I'm going to step you through all of the weeks of that development. This was the first thing that we saw, and it was a little scary, but we knew that there was a lot of potential there. Just kept going, kept iterating. We discovered that the bigger that we built, the better effectively raising the resolution, because those blocks become smaller the taller that you make those structures. So verticality then became one of our art style tenets. Month 2, we started getting a little bit more built out, fleshed out, investigating more with the lighting system that we were inheriting from PlanetSide. And then was when we started really getting creative. And you can see these tents are actually all made of blocks. I know it's a little weird, but that's what you can do with the right kind of smoothing.
It was that 2 weeks where we really also realized how much fun it was going to be. And that's one of the reasons why you see such a difference between these two screenshots. Even in the previous client, by this point in time, we were having a blast and everyone was becoming involved.
So then we just started building all over the place. And we were really having a good time working late at night, and we were getting really, really excited about what we thought the potential was here. So at that point, we realized that we had met that goal. We built, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And then we just kept building more. We built out Halas. We started working with characters to see how is a character going to fit into this blocky world, what kind of materials are going to look appropriate in this world, just trying to answer as many questions as we possibly could. So finally the day came when we saw this, and this was when we really knew that we had something that was really special. This is Paul Balan, one of our graphics programmers, breaking apart the world. So this is actually a building that Jeff made, right?
Yep.
I feel good.
Very good. It was fun. And Rosie didn't delete it.
I just made it into Swiss cheese. So I thought this was oops, sorry. Oh, I skipped over that. But it was very interesting when that wall fell away. You could see that inside the wall is dirt. There was like a real depth starting to show in the world. So after that, we got a big influx of people on the team, and we thought it would be a good idea to have people build, designers and artists that were new to the team, both designers and artists, build in the client, regardless of whether they were animators or character artists or designers. And we just started building and building and building. And I thought it was extremely interesting and also very encouraging to see that sometimes the best builders were just a producer on the team or a designer. It meant that you did not have to be an environment artist that went to college to build something that you could imagine.
It truthfully showed that you, as a layman, could be inspired by the artist who sits next to you, and that you could do amazing things. All it took was the ability to look at something that somebody had put together. And we found people after two weeks looking at what one another had done and literally creating things that were so much more amazing than the original creation, the original point of inspiration, that we ourselves were shocked.
And that's what we really hope for with Landmark, is we're hoping that you, the community, is going to inspire us as we in turn inspire you. One of the artists on the team asked if I was concerned that people in the community might build better stuff than the team. And I said, absolutely not. That is exactly our goal. We want to always be standing on the shoulders of the people that built before us. And I want to point out also that this ice house that you can see, sorry, on this side, one of the artists was actually a character concept artist, came on the team and built that right off the bat. He was a huge Minecraft fan, but he found that the smoothing on that particular material, which I believe was water.
It was water.
But he used it as if it was ice. And this was really, really exciting, because this is what we want. We want people to find things and do things that are totally unique and experimental and really, really let their creativity show.
I think the producer actually figured out that the little pieces of cloth could be hung together in tents.
So now it was time for a reality check. was the look and feel, the geometric look, was that really going to work for the IP? Was that appropriate for EverQuest? And I think in some ways, you know, we were really attached to it because once you build in a system like this, you start to fall in love with your own creation. And that's exactly what we're hoping for. But we thought we needed to have another goal where we took it to the next level. And you can see here that the terrains were really not where we needed to be. So the new goal was to get from the green rolling hills was this block terrain that we had to something very, very organic. So I'm going to turn it over to Greg Spence, and he's going to talk about how we achieved that goal.
Oh. No. She went away. Hi, everybody. I'm Greg, also known as Rothgar on our forums. And in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have picked the Ranger because we all know he's the first to die. So, but that's the character I play in EQ2. So anyway, I want to talk to you a little bit about the technical side of our voxel engine and how we make what you've seen so far in the demos. And first, we want to talk a little bit about, you know, what's a voxel and how we use voxels behind the scenes. So for every voxel in the world, and as you saw in the demo, they're actually very, very small now. In the pictures that Rosie showed for our first prototype, voxels were quite large. And in the new engine that we're using, voxels have been broken down to about 1/3 of that size. But for every voxel, we have to store some data for it. And some of that data is its location, the material for that voxel, and contouring information to get the smoothing. There's also some other stuff that's associated with every voxel. But as you can imagine that you have a really huge world with tiny voxels equals lots of voxels, and that gives us a really big data problem. So we have to figure out how are we going to store all the data to build these massive worlds that we want you guys to be able to play in. So the answer to that is a procedurally generated world. So the way that the system works is to basically use noise algorithms and noise textures to generate the base terrain out of these noise functions. And so we don't actually have to store that as voxel data. So that's what we start from. We have, even though it's algorithms to generate it, we have control over those by designing the actual noise textures that we use. And then that's how we can contour where we want valleys and mountains and the types of materials. And like I said, that procedurally generated terrain doesn't require any data. So we can then, after we generate the procedural data, we can augment that with our own customized voxels. So as you saw in the demo, when we were attacking the Dark Ratanga, there were a lot of stone works around there, and those were voxels added to the base natural terrain. But most of that natural terrain out there was still in its procedural state. So the amount of data associated with that scene wasn't as bad as if the entire area was generated from little blocks, like we started with the initial prototype. So another thing that we do, healing, no longer just for the tank anymore, we can actually heal our terrain, and what that means is we can remove the voxel data and revert it back to the procedural data, and the benefit of that is that we can reduce the data. So if you were to take something that you had built up into stone and replace it back with flat grass, you'd still be using customized voxels, which on our back end would take additional space for storage. But using healing tools that we're putting into the game, we can actually turn that back to the procedural terrain, which is very good and more optimal for us. So next we want to talk about how do we render the environment. How do we take these voxels and generate the amazing looking scene that you're seeing? And in the initial prototypes, the strategy was to actually render each of those voxels. So every voxel was drawn as a cube, and we used culling information to not draw the voxels that were behind, but it produced other types of visual issues that we had to deal with. In the new system, we actually take the voxels from the data and we use, there we go. So that was part of the problem. Like, we couldn't get as much blending and contouring with the old voxel system because we were just generating cubes. So in the new system, we're using mesh generation that takes that voxel data and generates meshes like you saw in the previous picture. And then the meshes are what you're actually being rendered on the screen. And then the meshes gives us much more capability for smoothing and blending. And that stuff just looks really cool. So as you can see here, this would be the voxels not smoothed. And then, oops, double click. And then smoothed, you get a very nice round sphere. And so you wouldn't even know that that was created from voxels because we're obviously not rendering blocks, we're rendering a mesh. So how do we achieve the epic vistas that you're seeing? What we have to contend with is making sure that your client can render everything that you see on the screen. And so we refer to that as level of detail, or LOD. And that basically means that the things that are closest to your camera are higher resolution textures, higher resolution in terms of the actual mesh itself. But as you get further from the camera, you would lose that resolution. You wouldn't notice it. So we use level of detail to optimize the rendering. And basically, the way the mesh generation works is, as you get further away from the camera, instead of using every little individual voxel to generate a mesh, we actually combine those into larger voxels, and we generate lower resolution meshes. And then we blend those level of detail smoothly as the distance gets away from your camera, and you should not notice the change in LOD as it goes away, and that's the goal. And that gives us the ability to render these really awesome landscapes and make sure it can perform on everybody's machine out there. And there's an example also from the demo. And then so the last part is we want to talk a little bit about physics. And when it comes to actually destroying the terrain, this is showing an image in the upper right or upper left of the actual game. And then in the lower right, you can see our physics debug tool. And that shows us the actual physics particles and what they're doing when we do the destruction. So it helps us debug and work on those particle effects. It's a pretty cool tool.